Are you struggling to create an intentional headspace? Are you unable to connect deeper with yourself? Come, and together, let's address the elephant in the room. I'm your host, Sinead Roche, and this is the Uncomfortable Podcast. You ever feel really passive with your life? Like life is living you and you're not living your life, like you're just existing? And when I think of that, I think of, are you being a top in your life? Like, honestly, that's how I think about it. Are you being a top in your life, or are you being a bottom? Right? And for me, like when I was thinking about like, what do I want to say today? What do I want to bring to the table today? I was thinking about like, when was like the last time I remember myself being really passive in my life? And I thought about 3rd grade. That's not to say that I have not been passive since, or that I have like just let life live my, like, it's not to say that I haven't just let life live me in the past or anything like that, or like really recently. I'm just saying like that was like the time that I'm thinking of. And I remember because in 3rd grade, I don't think I made friends. I think people made friends with me. Like people chose me, and following in line with that, like when my friends picked me, and they had certain friends, right, I started becoming friends with them, not because I wanted to necessarily, but just because like it was easiest. And I eventually started playing a sport I actually had no interest in. Became good at it, lacrosse, but I only played that sport because my friends played that sport. And yeah, it's 3rd grade, okay, let's give ourselves a break, like nothing bad, right? But for me, that's what it looks like to be really passive. Like I let other people guide me, and I kind of just went with the flow of things. I didn't really ask myself what I really wanted to do, and the things that I did want to do, I started to put them on like the back burner, because it was just easier. It was easier to be very passive than to like, I don't know, just partake in things because other people were partaking in it. And I know right now I'm talking about a lot about like social influence and like peer pressure, but it's not just like in that scenario. Like now that I'm 19, and hopefully in the future I'll have a job, or I'll create my own job somewhere along the lines. I was thinking about how like people can be passive, like also like in professional settings. And the way I see it is like someone's passive, like you like this job. Like say you're someone, you have this job, and you don't like it, right? But you're good at it. You're good at it, but you don't like it. You keep getting promoted, it's really easy. You complain a lot about the fact that like you don't like the job, but you continue to do it. You keep getting better and better at it, but by the time you're like 40 or something like that, like you're like, why the actual fuck am I doing this job still? Like, I actually don't like it. I think that's what means to be passive. And another example is like, why are we all going to university? Like, okay, wait, no hate, please. Because I understand the current job market. I understand we need degrees. I get it. But some people, I feel like some people are actually just like going to university because other people are going to university. Like, even if you just have like even an inkling of like, I want to learn more or something like that, it's great. But like, I think like some people are actually just going because like they have to go, right? And that's like what's convenient. That's what the next step is. Like, I think a lot of people, and myself included, are really passive. And we're gonna get to one point in our life where we're complaining about the fact that we don't have everything we want, where we're not mentally at the point where we want to be, and all you can say is, look back, what did you actually do to even achieve the things that you wanted? What did you actually do? And let me explain what passive is. Passive is being submissive to your life circumstances. Passive for me is going with what is most convenient to you. Like, you are living a life because it is easiest to live that life. And the things that you actually want to do, they're not easy. They will probably, 99% of the time, they will not be easy to do. The things you want will not be easy to do. To get in the headspace that you want, not easy to do. To become rich, not easy to do. Not easy to do. And I think that's because we've been so confused with the idea that convenience means good. I mean, in some cases it does, but I think when it comes to like what you enjoy in life and what you want to do with your life, convenience is complacency. Convenience is you listening to others and you letting other people dictate what you want to do, right? And that's why I think we need to become intentional. We need to become intentional. And intentional in being intentional with things, your thoughts, your routines, the people you hang out with, the time that you allocate for different activities. It's difficult and it's uncomfortable. And like the best way, like I think the best example that I have where I've seen someone being intentional is my dad. And I think my dad is confused about the fact that he's being intentional. Like, my dad has worked a job at the same company, has worked multiple jobs within the same company for, I think, around 20 years. Not within a day or anything like this, but like in a couple months, he decided, like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to join a different company, do something different. And he did. He was at that company, I think, for like a year or something, and then he switched again. And you know, my dad was saying to me, he's like, I think I'm going, like, I might become crazy. And I'm like, but are you doing what you feel is right for you? He's like, yeah, but people will call me crazy. I'm like, my dad was being intentional. Everything that he's done to switch to places, to even get out of the headspace that he has to be somewhere for 20 years, I think it's intentional. Right? And I know there's lots of people complaining about the fact that people don't stay to jobs anymore, right? I understand that, but what's the point if you're not being intentional with it, right? And where does intentionality stem from? It stems from your vision. It stems from your goals, right? So you gotta really ask yourself, what is it that I want? What is it that I want? Not what I need, what do I want? Do I want to be rich? Do I want to start my own company? Do I want to stop getting angry at things? Do I want to develop my relationship more? Right? Do I want to, I don't know, travel the world? You gotta ask yourself, what do you actually want? What do you as a person, no one else, no one peer pressuring you, no one looking towards you, like, what do you want? And I think once you've defined exactly what it is you're looking for in your life, the vision that you kind of have for your life. And let me tell you something. Some of us, we have wide, we have long, we have in detail, in-depth visions. Some of us, we have simple ones. And so what? It's great. I think the best thing is that, like, when you know what exactly you want to do and you're not walking around confused, you're not walking around just being led by other things, being led by other people's visions, right? And you just know for yourself what it is you want your life to look like, I think that's when you can start to change how you act, change how you think, change how you feel about certain things. I think that's where it stems from. And let's get into that. Let's get into what that actually looks like. Okay, let's start with routine, because routine is the surface level thing of everything. You have 24 hours in a day, right? And there's this certain thing called eustress. And eustress is like good stress. It's the kind of stress you get like on your wedding day. It's the kind of stress you have when you're graduating, right? I want you to think about the fact that you have 24 hours in a day and you being able to be intentional with all 24 hours. I want you to think of that as good stress. It's good stress, you know? You think it's limiting, right? But honestly, with the pressure, the time pressure, if you think about it, it makes you prioritize things. And so what does that look like? Are you within your day? So say, for example, one of my visions, and it's not just even like, or like one of my wants, right? Again, it's not just like one thing that you want, it can be multiple things. But one of my wants is to be healthier, right? What does my routine look like? What does my routine look like? Am I eating, like, am I like meal prepping? Am I making time for things like that? Am I talking to people who are actively going to the gym? Or am I still with people who are like, it's okay, you can skip it, things like this. See, the thing is, when you have your goal in mind, when you have the thing that you want in mind, you're gonna realize the people around you, the activities that you've been doing, they don't fit within that mold. And that's okay. That's not to say that anything is bad necessarily, but it doesn't fit within that mold. And as an intentional person or someone who's trying to be intentional, that means you have to allocate times to the things that are actually within your vision. You need to prioritize those things. And I think that's really difficult in a generation that's really good at giving into our impulses and giving into instant gratification. And I can say that because I do it all the time. One thing, I'm trying not to be a hypocrite. Like, I understand what it means to be intentional, but that doesn't mean I practice it all the time. And that comes from a lack of discipline in some areas, and also just a lack of building up that habit, right? And the thing is, because it's so difficult to be intentional, and because it is a practiced habit, the thing of like going cold turkey on like giving into your like small wants, right? Your instant gratifications, things that give you a small adrenaline rush, right? Or things that are just like really convenient to you, I don't think that's the best way to go about it. I don't think on January 1st you should wake up and you should have only like, what am I thinking? Like protein shakes and I don't know, chicken breast in your fridge. I don't think that's the way to go about it, because you're expecting 100% of intentionality, but you haven't built up that discipline to be that intentional yet. And so that's why I want to talk about 80% 20 rule. And I know this is falling within diets. Like if anyone's been on a diet ever, like you have that entire like talk, 80% of the time you are supposed to do the thing. You are supposed to eat healthy, and 20% of the time you're supposed to splurge. I want you to put that into practice when you're trying to be intentional with something. Write down your goal. Write down everything you need to do to be intentional with it. Right? And then also write some of the things that are convenient to you. Some of the things that you actually just don't want to give up. Right? And I think once you are at that point, once you build that discipline to be able to do 80% of the things that you are intentionally practicing, right? Even that 20% will get smaller. Right? It's about gradually building that discipline. And I think the reason why that's really important to gradually build it is because like you ever done something, you said you're gonna commit to it like the first day, and you said you're gonna go 100% all out, and then there's like a day like you just don't feel like it, and then you kind of give into it a lot. And once again, I'm gonna say this like with like dieting, right? I'm not just there right now, but you ever been like, okay, I want to lose this amount of weight, right? And I have only this amount of time, and you automatically say the first day everything 100% is gonna change. And you think you're not gonna feel a certain way at one point? Because that's the thing. If you say to yourself, I'm going to act intentional from this day forward, you're doing that because of motivation. You don't even know what that looks like yet. Like you have yet to build that habit up. You don't know how you're gonna feel when you're building it up. You don't know what it's gonna be like when you realize you have to give up some things that won't fit into that 20%. Like, for example, people, right? Like I said, sometimes the things that don't fit in with our vision or goals, that doesn't mean it's not bad. It just doesn't mean it fits in, right? And sometimes if you're saying to yourself, right, I'm gonna 100% change everything, I'm gonna act with intention, like my vision, my goal, it's going to be everything, bro, you're gonna have to cut off people from that day one if you're just gonna say that. And those aren't bad people necessarily. So that's why I think we have to give ourselves that grace. And I think even eventually what's gonna happen is you're not even gonna wanna give into that 20% anymore. Maybe that 20% became something different. Maybe it got added to the 80. I think that's why you have to practice things first. You have to build up those habits. You need to establish that type of pattern and that discipline with it. So that even the days when you're not feeling like, I really don't want to do this, like, you've already pushed past that in the past. Like, if you've had that emotion in the past, you can get over it this time because you've done it, right? But it's because you've gradually been able to do it. And I can give you guys an example when I'm trying to be intentional. I'm trying to be intentional with this podcast. I'm trying to do well with this, but right now the way I measure my success is, am I impacting one person at least? That's what I'm trying to do, right? And for me, I gotta ask myself, am I doing enough research? Am I putting enough time towards this podcast? And am I building the habits that I need in order to become successful with it? I can tell you no. No. In fact, I don't even think I'm at 80-20 right now. Maybe I'm at 60-40. Because I don't feel like right now first of all, I'm able to, time-wise, going through exams at this moment. But not even that, where my 20% stems from is not every single time I sit down to eat do I want to listen to a podcast. Not every single time I'm walking do I want to listen to a podcast. I want to listen to music. Just because I'm doing research on others and trying to gain more from them doesn't mean I want to do it all of the time. And is it hindering my goal, my vision? For sure. Yes, I'm aware of that. But that's why I focus on the 60. That's why I focus on the 80. I want to become very intentional with that. So when I'm doing research, I don't put distractions on. I don't put music on. I'm actually doing the actual research for it. And that's what it means, because there's literally going to be times where you just don't want to do it. It's understandable. But sometimes is it within that 20 range? And if it is, okay. Right? But like I said, once you build the habits up for it, the discipline for it, that 20 becomes depleted even further, right? And you're no longer doing things based off the emotion that you had when you talked about this plan. It's not even just about the passion anymore, it's about the drive and the execution of it. And, being intentional, isn't it just about the visions that you have and the goals that you have in terms of building a company, for example, right? It's not about just tangible things, it's also more mental. Mentally, for me, one of my goals is to become a less reactive person. And that is difficult. So I have to be intentional about it. Especially because I'm very emotionally driven. I think I've said this multiple times and I will continue to say it. I'm emotionally driven and I like to feed into my emotions in the way that I like to create scenarios in my head. I'm pretty sure it's I haven't searched up on this, but it might be a mental illness. But I like to create visions in my head that further that emotion. So if I'm angry, I want to feel angry. And I'm happy, I want to feel happy. And I need to stop that thought process of let me feed into this emotion even further than what I feel right now. Because what tends to happen is the emotion then carries over into my actions and into the interactions I have with people. And that's really bad because then my emotions are controlling me. So what I do, in order to stay intentional and to not give into that instant gratification that I feel or into that satisfying adrenaline that I feel when I want to give into my emotions, is I literally tell myself, the moment I feel it happening, I said breathe, I said stop, and breathe. Breathe, pause, focus on something around the room for 10 seconds, and I just want you to describe it. That's it. I take my mind off of it, and then I intentionally, right? Even though I know it's not satisfying, it's very uncomfortable, it's very irritating to have to do this. I intentionally go into a different thought. In fact, sometimes I'll even go to a thought that's the exact opposite of the emotion I was feeling. So if I was angry, I go to a vision of, or a scenario of mine that makes me feel calm, right? And it is difficult because, especially with emotions, I feel it's just easier. And the only person who can really hold you accountable is you. And with everything, all of this, being intentional, acting on your plans, your decisions, it's you. It's you who has to be able to do it. And again, it's kind of why you have to give yourself that grace period, because otherwise you're doing everything out of motivation and not being able to build that habit and build the discipline for it. Yeah, being intentional is difficult, but I think it's so worth it. I think it's the reason why I've gotten to the place where I am today. For example, the gym. Anyone who knows me, I was a very chubby kid. I still believe I am. But I used to, at one point in my life, it was my dad forcing me to go to the gym all the time. And at one point, I started becoming very intentional with it. I started going to the gym 4 times a week. I upped it to 5, then 6, which was kind of an unhealthy amount. But I became intentional with it. Even when I was tired, and I had my brother driving me to the gym at one point, and I was literally tired from school and classes, I would go to the gym. I would get over the emotion of it. And now the fact is for me is that going to the gym, doing something that I didn't like to do in the past, but I know that in order to get to my goal, I have to. It's easy. It's very easy for me to do that. It's not even, I don't even feel like I have discipline for it. It's just like habit now. Like being intentional, it's so important. And even like in a mental space, in the past when I had like arguments with my friends, I did not speak and I became very mean, let's say it like that. Now I become silent and I force myself to speak, and it's become a habit too, like being able to voice out my internal emotions with people and being able to be vulnerable with people, because I was so intentional about it. Because every single time I had the urge to go back into my old habits, I told myself no, because you want to be that person. So practice being that person. And again, it's not going to happen 100% of the time, but it will eventually. And so the question you should be asking yourself today is, if you have a vision, and even if you don't, start maybe to think about what you want. I want you to think about, can you be 80% of the time? 80% of the time, are you intentional with it? 80% of the time, do your habits reflect you building towards that goal? Ask yourself that, and then act on it. Thank you guys so much for listening to today.